Hey guys, it's Justin, and today I'm going to be bringing you a tutorial on how to use the email messaging service within Salesforce, specifically how you're going to be using this within an Apex context. I think this is the quick and dirty of how you're going to go and learn everything you need to just get your feet wet and know probably like 80 to 90% of everything there is to know about this. Quick overview. Why would you want to trigger something from Apex code over Process Builder? Why you'd want to use Apex? One, you want to log activities. You want to log the email as an activity, and it's an outbound message. Two, you want to control how many emails are getting sent out. Let's say you're going and loading 100 emails. If this is just a workflow or even a process or even a trigger, you will get an error loading these messages because of the email messaging limitations. So you need to either change your batch size of how you're loading things, or you would need to go and use a batch job. Now, if you're just doing some email trigger, like pretty common email notification is a closed one deal to the sales team, this would probably not constitute a need for a Apex trigger, but rather just a simple workflow. The next thing to talk about is the single messaging class versus the mass email message class. So there's really two kind of distinctions here, and I would say the single email message is more flexible, and the mass email message is more useful for obviously mass emailing, depending on your requirements. So single is good for if you're wanting to do a trigger where you're not necessarily sure how many records you want to go and message, or if you need to attach a document. Let's say you want to run this through a document merging service. You would go and run this through the document merging service and then attach a PDF. Or let's say you want to go and customize the email more than what a template's capable of. For instance, let's say you want to add your line items, then you need to do some sort of custom HTML, and that's why you would go and use the single email messaging. Now, why would you use mass email messaging? Well, you're going to be doing a simple template that doesn't require a lot of customization, and you want to send to a lot of emails. Next important thing is limits. The Salesforce email service does have some limits. Specifically for the single email message, you have 10 emails per an Apex call, and this is per batch job. So if you want to do, let's say, 100 emails using the single email messaging, you will need to have this wrapped within a batch job and control the batch size. If you don't do this, let's say you have it a trigger, this would reduce your data loading capacity to, at worst, you have 10 records per batch size, which would significantly hamper how fast you can load data. Another good thing to know is that the send email is considered a web callout. So this line here is considered a web callout. Now, the save as activity is fine, and you don't need to worry about that. But if you wanted to, let's say, update opportunity fields, you need to make sure you send out all of your emails within an opportunity before you go and update said opportunities. The last thing is that if you're going to use an organization-wide default address, you will need to make sure that anyone who is triggering this from a trigger / process has access to that email. So let's say you want only system admins to have access to the email, but then all users can update the opportunity, and that's what you're triggering this from, then you would go and run into some Apex errors. With that, let's get into some of the config here. So first thing is the organize, or let's go and just look at the class itself. So I'd say this isn't too complicated. I have an outbound email class, and I have a private method here that I'm just using and wrapping in my other methods that I'll talk about in a second. But I'm constructing a new single email message object, and I have a set target object ID. Now this is required. If you don't have a contact lead user, you'll need to go and create said object to send. And this is for an opportunity. This is a custom field. Set of CC addresses. This takes a list of strings. So I have a list of strings. This just happens to be one string. The what ID is the object that you're going to go and attach your template to. So for instance, this is off the opportunity object. So I'm using the opportunity ID. The organization-wide default, the org-wide email address. This is the ID for that email address. I'll show you how to get that in a second. Set save as activity. I have this set to true. And this is so it shows up as an activity within Salesforce. And the email template ID, which I have here. And then you're going to go ahead and send email. So there's two IDs here. I would say in some sort of production environment, you probably wouldn't want to have these hard-coded. You would want to go and store this in custom metadata. Nevertheless, this is a demo. So how do we get the organization-wide email address? It's pretty simple. We actually need to use a SOQL query. So I have the SOQL query here, select ID, address from org-wide email address. This is the object. Now you could also use the Visual Studio Code SOQL query link above to go and learn how to do that. But we get this ID here, which is what we use for on line 20 to go and set that. To get the template ID, I have this just as a Lightning template. So to access those in Lightning, you go to the app launcher, you search for email templates, and you go and have, I have this called as a service reminder. I think a service reminder, a nonprofit donation acknowledgement would be probably another common use case for something like this. But I have a simple HTML templates, and I have the related entity type as opportunity. And how do you go and get the ID? Well, it's in the URL akin to standard Salesforce practice. So then you would go and update that here. With that, let's go ahead and show from the process on how to do that. So there's three ways I'm going to cover on how to trigger this. I'm going to cover how to trigger this from a process builder. I'm going to show you how to trigger this from an Apex trigger, and then I'm going to show you how to go and send from a batch job. So for a process builder, we do need a wrapper method of this send email. Specifically, we need to use the @invocable method tag. We also need a label for this. So I have send from process. Public is fine, static void. And I think critically, we need a list of IDs as the parameter. Now, we'll touch on that more in a second, but this does need to be the primitive type of list of IDs. With that, I'm going and getting all of the opportunities specifically so I can get this contact field. And then I'm going and iterating through those opportunities to send the email. Now, to look within the process, I have that process open. You can see I just call it opportunity process. It's on when a record's created or edited. I don't have any criteria. and we use the the call apex action within Process Builder, and critically, we are setting the apex variable of op IDs to the opportunity ID. One thing to note is that you have only one opportunity ID. Don't be alarmed. The process builder will go and make sure the type is right, and also you'll get a type error if you go and have an invocable method that does not have a list of IDs. So that's what you need to do there. So if I go ahead and activate this, and also let me make sure that trigger is not active. I'll just show that this is inactive. And I go to, let's say I go to test stop. Let me also confirm that the email for this is correct. 126. Okay, perfect. So if I go and I just have it where it will send based on if it's edited, then we can go to this and we can see test email from address. Perfect. Okay, so the next thing to show is how to go and send this from a trigger. So what I have here is another op. What you can do is we can just run through the code. So I have an opportunity trigger before update, and what I do is I just check if it's before, and I send the outbound email. And I also just send the whole trigger.new context as this, because it's from the opportunity trigger, comes over as a list of opportunities. And you can go and see that method here, send from trigger batch, takes in a list of opportunities as a parameter, and then we just iterate through all of those. So if I go ahead and edit and save, as that's how I go and send this, what you'll see is this will take a second, but it will go and send. And if I go to this temp mail, it is that date, and you can see that here. The last thing is to go and send it from a batch. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and deactivate that trigger. And the way you do that is going to Apex Triggers and going and making this inactive. And what you can do from there is I have this batch class. This is very standard batch class. The one thing to note is in the scheduling context, I do limit the batch size to 10 per the limits. And I'm going and I have a select account ID, which I'll just confirm is the correct account ID. But what you can do is send this per your given criteria, and you would go and send email from batch. And I also have this dubious DML call just so then to showcase that you can't update from that. So I'll go ahead and execute this. And what you would see is if I go back to the list, we'll see another email when this loads. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found this informative. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. If there's anything you'd like me to cover, please feel free to leave your suggestions as well. And thanks and have a great day.